Recording.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on whether you're joining us from the UK or US. Thanks everyone for coming along to this webinar this afternoon. We are pleased to see so many of you here and we hope that you enjoy it. Today we are hosting a short series of webinars called Accounts Expert, and today we're kicking off with manual corrections. I am lucky enough to be joined by Tony Smith, who is one of our support specialists here at Brightpearl. He is our go-to person for all things accounts and always here and happy to help with any accounting issues that we may have. So I'm going to hand over to Tony now and let him run through today's agenda, which I hope you're going to find useful, what we'll be covering and how he's here to help. I'll hand over. Thanks.
Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be. My name's Tony and I am on the support team. What we're going to be doing today is going through some very basic accounting corrections, and we're going to go through the allocation screen, which is a very useful screen to use, especially if you are having exchange rate variances and things like that. Pesky pennies, which is those little pennies that are kind of sitting there that you just want to get rid of. The age report that is showing a zero balance. The journals on it contacts. Overpayment, so you've actually paid too much money and you're getting an error message. Invoices are showing on the actual allocation screen, but there's no balance, and then the corrections report, which isn't really an error checking, but it's more to see if you can find things to help you work out any problems that may be there. After we've done that, what we can then do is we can then go into the QA area of the system. Now, what I've done is I have set up an account already. Now, so if I go into my customers and list all customers, what you can see is I do have some already set up here. So in the first one, we're going to go into our allocation screen for allocations. So when we go in here, we can go to our bottom under the allocate payment. And what we're going to notice in here is that there's a value sitting in here, and it's an outstanding of £120. So what we're going to do is, in this case, we know there's going to be a difference, maybe of £10, £5, due to, I don't know, exchange rate variance, or there's a rounding issue due to VAT or tax or something like that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put £110 in here. Now, what we then can do is use the adjustment column. Now, what I'm going to do is just type £10 in there. And as you can see, it goes green. Now, what we notice is that we now have a drop-down menu here called Adjustments and Exchange Rate Gain and Loss. What you might find is that there's none here, or you don't have one that you really want. So what we can do in this case is we can actually create some more to see in there. So to do this, we go into our accounting, we go to Setup, and we go into our chart of accounts. Now, what we're going to do here is when we scroll through, we're going to look in around the 7,000 range. You can use whatever you wish. And in this case, what we can see is that 7,060 adjustments is here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this off rather than turn it on, but it's the same premise. So I'm going to click on the little edit button. And what we can see is we can see the edit screen under here. And what we're looking for is this allocate discounts to this account. And at the moment it says yes. And I'm going to set that to no. I don't want to use it anymore. So I'm just going to press save, and that's going to save it for me. Now, once I've done this, I'm going to go back into our customers. Now, everything I'm doing here, we can do under the suppliers as well as customers. So even though I'm showing it for customers, it's still the same holds true for your suppliers. So I'm going to go back to my list of customers and my allocation screen. And what I'm then going to do is go to allocate payments. Again, I'm going to put £110 in here, and £10 under the adjustment. Now, as you can see, the pop-up box has appeared, but this time there's only one here. If we were to add more, it would basically there'd be more and more here that you can choose from. So in this case, I'm actually going to choose the exchange rate gains and loss. Now, we do need to pick the bank account, unfortunately, and we can put a reference in there if we want to, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it blank for the moment. It will tell us a little message about that, but don't worry about it. So overall, what's going to happen here is you're going to take £110 into your bank, but the adjustment is going to be going to the exchange rate gains and loss normal code. So what I'm going to do is allocate payment. And again, it's just telling me I've got no reference in there, and I'm happy with that. And I can say OK to that. As you can see, it's now gone. It's completely gone there, and the balance has been zeroed off as well. And just to see it's gone there, we're going to go to Accounting, Setup, Chart of Accounts, and we're going to go into the 7,000 range. So what we'll do is scroll down here, 7,700 exchange rate gains and loss, and we can see this £10 showing up here. So that's probably the easiest option, especially if you know there's going to be an overpayment due to maybe foreign currency exchange rates or something like that. Now, our next customer is customer Penny, for those pesky pennies. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop into her account, and what we can see is there's a penny sitting there. So when we go to allocate payment, it's sitting there as outstanding. Now, again, this may be a payment, a penny for an invoice or a penny for a credit note. There could be multiple pennies. In fact, it can even be the same process can actually be used if you're writing off a large value. It's the same process, and it works both for customers and suppliers or vendors, if you wish to call them that. So in this case, what we're going to do, we're just going to go into our customers, and we're going to create a quick credit. So in here, we're going to pick Penny, and there she is. And we can put some details if we want, and in this case, I'm going to leave that blank. We're going to, in the net, put 0.01 penny. Now, I'm going to use T9. You should check with your accountant what T code you want to use. So in this case, T9 says don't show under the VAT return, and therefore it's not going to be there. But your accountant will be able to advise you best what code they wish you to use. From the drop-down menu, we're going to post this into our exchange rate gains and loss account. Now, it doesn't have to be the exchange rate loss account. It can be fees and a fees account. It can be anything you really want. It's just so it goes through this normal code. And as you can see, the total there is a penny. So what we're going to do is just hit enter credit, and that's all done for us now. So we're going to pop back in to our pennies customer, and in here, what we should see is the account balance is now showing 0. That's not all of it, unfortunately, because what we need to now do is we need to allocate these together. So as you can see, we have a penny on the invoice and we have a penny credit note. So we can either type 0. In this case, try not to hit the comma, but the full stop, 0.01, or you can use the pay in full. Again, it will actually do the same thing. As you notice, the total is 0 because they're matching each other and balancing off. We don't have the drop-down menu because we don't get that unless we're using the adjustment column. But just like before, we can click on the select bank account. We can put a reference in there if we wish, and we can hit the allocate payment. Again, it's telling me that we've not entered a reference for this transaction. That's fine. And it's telling me the payment value is 0. Again, that's fine. And what we'll see is that disappears off, and it's now been allocated. So that's really good. The next one that we can come across is under our aged report. So if we go to our customers and our aged debtors report, what we see is we're actually seeing this balance customer. Can you see that it's actually got a 0 value here? And what it overall means is that nothing is owed by this customer, but the system still thinks there's something outstanding. So what we can do is we just pop into the balance customer. We come down to the allocate payment. And in here, what we see is we've got an invoice for £120, and we actually have a sales credit for £120. And in this case, what we need to do is we need to allocate them together. So again, just like before, we can click on the pay in full, the pay in full. The allocation payment is now showing 0, and we can pick a bank account. Again, don't worry about picking the bank account. Some people do worry that it's going to do something under your bank. It doesn't. It's really there in case you want to take any extra, pay any extra money or receive any extra money. But in this case, the balancing off, so it's going to be a 0 value. So again, I'm going to leave the reference number blank, and I'm going to allocate the payment. And again, it tells me that I've not put a reference in, and the payment total is 0. Again, that is fine. Now what we'll see is it's now balanced off. The balance is still showing 0. And when we go to our customers and aged debtors, what we can see is that hasn't actually been removed now. We've balanced them off, we've allocated them together, and that's taken it away from there. So that's exactly what we want to do. So our next one is it's not really correction as such, but it's more to do with a transaction that's been posted. So when we go to our customers, and we're going to go to our journal customer, what we notice here is there's an account balance of minus £120. But when we go into the allocate payment, there's nothing here. And the reason for this is under accounting and under the actual financial history, which is a really useful screen to know about and to use, is that we can see there's this JJ journal type sitting here. Now, what this does is journals can be posted to a contact, customer or supplier. The problem is they are not seen under the allocation screen. Now, it's not a real problem because you can go into the actual journal, and from the journal you can actually adjust the order ID and the invoice reference. But if you're not feeling too confident with adjusting journals, what I would advise is that you delete this journal and pull it back on as a credit note or an invoice, as the case may be. That way it will show up under the actual accounting window, and then that will solve that problem for you. Okay. Now, once we've done that, the next one that is actually quite a big one for people that they do come across is when we go into an allocation screen, we get a message telling us that it's been overpaid. So in this case, we can see there's an account balance of minus £20, and we go to the allocate payment, and we see the pink red line. Now in here it's saying that the total is £120 and £140 being paid, leaving an outstanding value of minus £20. The big mistake people do make when they're doing this is they click on the invoice rather than the sales receipt or the payment. And if I show you this, when we go in, what you'll notice is people will add the extra line in here, and this can cause problems. We don't want to do that. So what we need to do is we need to go into our financial history and we need to find the actual physical payment for it. Now in this case, very simple because we've only got 2 in here. And what can happen though is if you've got quite a lot, it's quite daunting trying to find them all. So as a quick tip, what we can do is we can actually take the invoice reference and copy it and go into our show filter. Now in the show filter we can put it into the search and we can filter the report, and what that does is it will only show those transactions that actually have an invoice reference of SI 1005. So in this case there's only 2, so it's a very good way of actually filtering out stuff you don't need to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the sales receipt. Now this problem doesn't always occur, and I've had to actually manually create it. So what we're going to see is when we go in here, we're going to see a line already kind of sitting there. You wouldn't normally see this in here. It's only here because I've actually had to manually do this. So what we're going to do is under the invoice reference, I'm going to put a reference number in here. I'm going to put over 1. You can put pretty much whatever you want, but I try and keep it to something that kind of stands out and I know what it means. Under the account nominal code, I'm going to go to 1100. Again, this is your debt control account. And under the credit, I'm going to put £20. Now, at the moment, it's unbalanced. So what I need to do is I need to change the line that's going against the invoice as well. Overall, this is now going to balance up for us. Now, we can go along and we can hit the save changes. The problem is it's going to give you a warning message, and the reason for this is we need to put a reason for modification in. So in this case you can put whatever you want. It can be a full stop, it can actually be anything you want up to a small paragraph of what's gone on, and it's really there so that you know what's happened later on if you need to come back to this. So I'm going to put overpay payment in there. I'm just going to save the changes. Again, tell me I'm not putting any details, that's fine, I'm happy with that. And when I go back into the accounting again, the balance is still showing minus 20, that hasn't changed. But under the allocate payment, what we notice is the red line's gone and the error message is gone. So we can see this over in here. What we can now do is go along and we can pay that money back. We can allocate it against an invoice. It's pretty much there to write off, do whatever we need to do with it. But we've now got rid of that error message, and that's really the main thing for us to do. Now, the next one is a bit of a hard one because there can be many reasons for this, but I'm going to show you quite a common reason for it. And this is when you go into the balance and there's an invoice or a credit note kind of sitting there, but the balance is saying nothing. So when I go into invoice, what we see is it says nothing here. But when we go into the allocate payment, what we're noticing is there's an invoice sitting there. Now, in this case, it's normally down to probably something like a invoice reference number has been changed or something's been deleted. If you're not sure, and as I've shown you this, please do come back to support. We will be only too happy to look into this for you. So in this case, we're going to go to financial history. And again, what we can see is we can see the 2 values balancing each other out. But the sales invoice I've actually changed. I've actually put an A there. Now what this has done is it's caused it to not be linked. So if I go into the ID 10, which is a journal ID, what I can see is this A. So I'm just going to take that out. I'm going to put a reason for modification in here. So just going to put that to change. And then I'm going to save those changes. Now what this is going to do is it's going to tell it's been successfully updated. We go to the accounting, it's still showing a zero balance, but when we go to the allocate payment, it's actually cleared off now. There's nothing there. And if we go and check our financial history, what we'll see is them being shown as cleared. Now, there are other reasons for this. So for example, it may be that there's only one line here shown as cleared, or there's one line shown as cleared and another line that has shown as not cleared. But if you're not sure, just call contact support. We can look into this for you. We can advise you and investigate it for you. Now, the last one we're going to look at isn't really a correction as such. It's more to help you understand what's gone on. We do get people that phone up and say, my invoice has disappeared under my contact, or the credit note that I thought was going to be there isn't there anymore, or it's changed. What's happened? So what we can do is we can go into our reports. From our reports, we're looking for the corrections, and this is a corrections report. Now in here, as you can see, I have done a number of corrections already for us to have a look at. So there's a reason, so that's why we always type a reason if possible, so we can actually see what's gone on. But we can actually go in and we can actually see what's gone on. So if you look at ID 14, what we can see here is I've cancelled it. And I know this because it's going to 999 as postings and the debit and credit is 0. What that then means in this case is that the reason we can't see it under the contact is because we've actually gone along and deleted it. So we know what's happened with that and we can decide what the best course of action is for that. So it's a really useful report for us to know about. Now, we've been through all the basic corrections. There are other ones that are a little bit more in depth, but they're ones that you should really contact support about so we can investigate fully as to the reasoning behind that for you. But again, any problems like that, please do contact support. So that's it for the basic error corrections. I hope it's been helpful. What I'll do is I'll put you through to put you back through to Helen, and we can take it from there. Okay, 1 second, please.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Tony. I hope you found that useful. I know there's certainly some interesting things to take away. We haven't had too many questions come in. We've just had one from Mark, and that would be, why would a JJ be present on a customer record? Tony, would you be able to answer that one?
Hi, Mark. Okay, simply put, a JJ should never really be under the customer record. It can be put there as going into the accounting and enter a journal, and you normally find that they are entered at, if you be new to Brightpearl, or if you've done a manual correction, something like that. But we would always advise never to use a JJ journal type when doing an invoice or a credit note. You should always go through the actual creation of it instead. I hope that's answered that question for you, Mark.
That's great. Thanks, Tony. Okay, we don't seem to have too many more questions coming in. We would like to thank you all for joining us today. I know that it's very sunny outside and it's Friday, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We're here to help, so if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to either log a support ticket via the support portal or email myself at success@brightpearl.com with any questions you may have about webinars, or if there's anything you'd like to see in the future. Thanks very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.